Say, kids, what time is it?
It's kind of like watching TV, but, in your car.
104.7 The K, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens. This is Dark Side of the Stream, episode 169. This week was my pick.
69.
Yeah, we already made that joke before. My pick was on HBO Max. It's called Cowchilla, and it tells the story of a bus of school children and a driver who were kidnapped and went missing for a couple days, only to be found in a rock quarry somewhere in California. I had no idea about this story. Because it was kind of one of those things where I was like, oh God, what are we going to watch next? We're going to watch next. And then they just popped this up as a thing.
And the universe feeds it to us.
What's this Cowchilla business? And then I kind of read the Reader's Digest.
Well, I told you, we talked about it before. In the 70s in California, stealing kids was the thing, dude. Like, it was going down, bro. Like, they paranoid at us. Like, be careful, be aware.
We got a Jay Stevens
I almost
shirt.
got jacked that one time, man.
Someone find us a school picture of Jay Stevens, like it, seventh.
I'd be like this, looking around for kidnappers.
No, just your school photo. Like
I have
on the front, and it's just you as a school photo, and on the back it said, "In the 70s, stealing kids was the thing." It's Jay Stevens. Make that shirt. You're gonna sell 1 million of them, and I just want 5%. That's it. You can have 5%. You can have that. You can have the whole thing. I just want 5% for the idea. Either way, yes. This story tells the story of a date in the summer of 1978. A school bus full of children. We're headed home. It's Cowchilla, California, is a farming community, very small. A lot of ranchers and rodeo guys and cowboys out there.
Yeah.
And they're just going down a country road, and all of a sudden, a van pulls up in front of them. 3 masked with pantyhose on their face.
Yeah,
gunmen jump into the bus, order everyone off, or actually first they drove it to a location.
Sold it first.
Then they threw them into a bus. Then
two separate trucks,
two separate vans. And then they took them to an undisclosed location and buried them alive. Essentially,
in like an
enclosed burial
like a cave thing. Yeah,
that was inside of a rock quarry where they would find later on. But first out of the gate, this was a long time ago, obviously. And so what this story was actually helpful for was understanding childhood trauma. And what I mean by that is, up until this point, if you would go through something like this as a kid, most of the time they didn't know how to deal with it. And they'd be like, well, they're kids. They'll get over it.
You'll get over it. You're fine.
This was the first time that they could actually have a very traumatic experience
a mass case study.
Where they,
30 kids,
a bunch of children. So you got a bunch of different variables. You also have a situation where they survived, so you could follow their progression or degression after the fact, and then kind of go look back and say, okay, how traumatic was this to these children and how did it affect them? I'll be the first to tell you that it affected every single one of these kids and the bus driver negatively.
Man. And me and Mike the Intern both hate when kids are messed with.
Yeah,
that's the one thing that we are advocates for.
And that's the thing we both like. Oh, did you see that documentary? Yeah, it's about kids. No, pass. I wasn't thinking because I saw that they were survived. So I was like, okay, it'll be okay. They didn't get assaulted. They didn't get killed.
Which was good.
So
I
was like, okay, cool. But what I didn't think of was the emotional and traumatic toll this would take on every single individual. Let's start with the hero of the story, Michael, the 14-year-old kid who had stole beer from his mom.
Yeah, cool kid.
Screwed her, like almost burned the house down.
A cool kid, yeah.
So as punishment, he gets told, you're going to have to take the bus home from school this day. So he never really had to take the bus home, but on this specific day, he had to take the bus.
The universe put him on that bus, man.
Yo, dude, 110%. I agree with you on that, 1,000,000%.
The universe put him
on
that bus.
So he wasn't even supposed to ride that bus specifically on that day. He just happened to be making out with some chick who then tells him, hey, you're going to miss the bus. And he's like, oh my God, you're right. So he runs, he catches the last bus out, and that's why he was on there.
Meant to be.
So then the kidnapping happens, and we'll talk about how that went down next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. 104.7 The Cave, Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens in the studio. It's Dark Side of the Stream, episode 169, Cowchilla on Max. So a bunch of these kids are in a bus. Some of them are related because, again, this is a small farming community.
Small town.
And we mentioned Michael, the oldest one on the bus, with the exception of the bus driver. He was like 14. Everyone else was like, 8, 9, 10 years old. And so he was the cool kid on the bus. The only reason he was there because he was in trouble. They get kidnapped. They get driven around until they ditch the bus in a ditch. and then they get thrown into these vans, taken to a rock quarry, and essentially buried alive in the structure with a fan. But again, it's summer.
Yeah, almost
it's
like
California.
a tomb, kind of like a
it.
mummy's tomb, like, you know.
And they're freaking out. And there were a couple heroes in this. Jody, who was the 10-year-old girl, who was the oldest girl in there that was trying to keep all the kids sane and was helping them. And then Michael, who with the bus driver were the two that basically got them out of it. And early on, the bus driver was doing the best he could, and they asked him to kind of push up on the manhole cover. And this is why I bring this up, is because I personally think he didn't try to move it. I think he gave them the idea that he tried, but in his mind, he's thinking, look, if these guys are up there waiting for us,
right, we don't want to be popping our heads.
They're going to kill us or whatever. I don't want to cause any more issues. So he doesn't. Well, then a day goes by, whatever, and the structure starts to collapse, and they start to realize that they're going to get buried alive if they don't act. The fans aren't working anymore. Can't breathe in there. So this 14-year-old kid, dude,
starts digging.
He does it himself,
pushing and digging,
and with the help of the bus driver lifting, was able to basically knock off these giant truck batteries that were keeping the manhole cover on there. He pushes them off. They escape. And they basically walk out, and some guy at the rock quarry is like, "Oh my God, they're looking for you, kids. They've been looking for you."
Now, tell me this though. Here's the part that I question: if you're a school bus driver, you're driving up, and there's a car pulling the side of the road, and these guys, there you go, Mike, and these guys are like, you see people, and then you see they have guns. No, don't stop when they don't stop when you're in a bus.
Because
man.
I had the same thought whenever it wasn't real time. They're doing the reenactment. But yes, when that bus pops in front of them,
you stop for a second. You see they have guns. Truck it.
But then you've got three guys pointing guns, all cocked right at you. I'm gonna stop. Because if it was just me in the car, yes.
Right, you're punching.
But then my decision could then affect the lives of 26 other kids.
I think I'm.
So I know where he's coming from.
I think I'm punching it.
If it was by myself, hell yeah, we're gonna gun it. I'm gonna hit every one of those dudes in my car, and if I get shot doing it, I get shot. But again, it's kind of like it's the. You
yell, you start punching, you go, kids, lay down on the floor, and you just punch it, and you punch it.
It's kind of like when you're driving.
Kids,
I'm not saying that I did it.
Rocco, what's the guy's name, the bus driver?
Otto.
Hey,
kids.
Hold on, kids, here we go.
Get a little bit faster.
We're killing fools.
So no, it's kind of like the yellow light turning red argument, right? Like if you're going down the street and you see the lights turning yellow and you're like, I'm going to make it, you gun it through the red, right? I don't do that when I have other people in the car.
Yeah,
I might do it by myself.
I don't do it with the party bus.
I don't do it with other people. I don't do it with other people in the car just because I am making that decision for them that I'm willing to risk my life to make a red, but they might not be. So I try not to do that stuff when it affects other people. But I get what you're saying.
I feel I'm punching
all day. So they get out. And actually, we missed the search because that was kind of cool with the plane guys. We'll talk about that next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The K. Mike, the intern, Jay Stevens, back in the. I just let your Cowchilla back in the studio. Dark Side of the Stream, episode 169, discussing Cowchilla on Mac. So before they got essentially escaped themselves, the search was on because the kids went home.
Massive manhunt.
This sheriff ends up asking these pilots to fly around. They end up following this creek, and then they find the bus. Then they end up finding, I think, one of the vehicles, which then leads them to the buses, which then leads them to the people who are actually.
How mysterious would it have been, though, to be? You're like, a bus of kids disappeared. What? Like,
well, and that's the thing.
And then,
when they found the bus,
now the kids disappeared. What?
That's what the parents were thinking. They were like, what? UFOs?
Yeah,
get them?
Yeah, they were just
gone.
UFOs. Yeah.
So inevitably, they trail this back to one very wealthy kid and his friends,
right,
who were just upper white class California kids. One of the families was so wealthy they owned Magic Mountain. They owned just, I mean, so wealthy that when this guy was finally released, in 2020, after being in jail for 40-something years, he had a trust of $100 million waiting for him, and on top of the fact that he continued to run businesses from behind bars and bought and sold vintage cars because that's what he liked to do.
Yeah,
that was his whole thing. He just liked cars. He didn't want to run the business. He just liked buying and selling businesses, and he just liked getting money, even though he didn't need it.
Right.
He just wanted it.
And this was a cockamamie plan because they wanted to make a movie or something.
So basically, they just like Dirty
script.
Harry movies, and they wanted to pull off a caper because they were bored rich kids.
See? Yeah, really frustrating. Dude,
so crazy. This wasn't a bunch of drug-addled cult kids. This was just a bunch of rich kids that had too much time on their hands.
Let's get a rush out of something.
And inevitably, they would go to prison and they would stay there for a very long time. The two brothers ended up getting out earlier. The mastermind, they kept trying to get him to stay in eventually because of money. They ended up paying off one of the survivors to tell him to ride off, and it's pretty obvious that's what happened.
Yeah, you could tell that one.
They were bought and sold. Some could not be because, again, like we said, this was a study of childhood trauma, and they learned a lot.
So someone would say it ruined their lives, you know?
Yeah, the 14-year-old kid didn't get the credit, and even though he didn't really want it, that just completely kind of just messed him up. You could tell it messed him up. The 9-year-old boy he was in and out of prison, drug issues. He's now, found God and he's a pastor and stuff. And, it's great that they're good, but you could tell that this has taken their toll and they relive this thing every single day of their life.
Crazy scenario.
It's a crazy scenario. It's a crazy story. Thank God they all got out alive, and we'll give it our review next. Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7 The Cave. Mike the Intern, Jay Stevens back in the studio, episode 169, Dark Side of the Stream. Cowchilla on Max. So how many flashlight batteries would you give this documentary?
I'll give it 3,
Solid 3?
Yeah, didn't have any crazy twist or anything. It was just a weird story,
I thought the crazy twist was really what this guy was able to do after the fact, continuing to run his businesses.
Oh, yeah, well,
the money he had. That was the thing.
It
was just like this dude just sat in a cell and just continued to live life. Like it didn't really matter. Contraband.
Smoked in a butt phone,
Of multiple butt phones.
Yeah.
But
it can be done. People do it, they run business. Criminal organizations will keep it going from inside prison, It
was an argument of is mental harm the same as physical harm, and I agree that it is, especially when you look at these kids and what they went through.
How could they think it's not?
How could you say that these kids were not affected by what you did to them? Even though, they still
don't mess with kids.
In my opinion, should still be in prison, especially the ringleader of the whole thing, the kid with the money. He should still be in, but it is what it is. And that is the American justice system, live and in full color. Jay, where are we going next week?
Well, we're going right here to Springfield, Missouri. We're coming back, baby. We're going local. We're going topical. I wasn't too familiar with the story because I moved here kind of maybe during it all. The Gypsy Blanchard girl, she just got released from Springfield here. There's a documentary on HBO Max. I think it's called Mommy Dearest and Dead or something. Really deep dives into the story. Which the house is right here in Springfield. Jordan says she used to walk her dog by it every day and never knew anything weird was going on.
We played at a Comic-Con here in town.
She was
there and getting paraded around in that wheelchair with her mom, and she was a Make-A-Wish kid, and we're all like, oh wow, and then all that stuff that happened later.
You have your kid watch this. You look like the best
I knew something was up
though,
man. It was too weird. The whole situation was weird, and you kind of after being involved in this for so long, you gotta be BS meter, and that one was kind of
this makes any parent look like a stellar parent after you see this, man.
Oh, that and the fact that her mother, her own family was like, that's what she deserved. She obviously had burned some bridges, but we'll get into
evil woman
next week.
Next week,
you can always
watch it.
Yeah, if you haven't already, which I'm sure you already have. Everyone else has. Streaming this online, Facebook or YouTube, 9 a.m. on Thursdays, or listen to it during my show at 9 or Jay's during the 6 p.m. hour, or for free as a free podcast on our 104.7 The Cave app. I'm Mike the Intern. That's Cowchilla. Jay Stevens reminding you, we watch movies, so you don't have to. It's Dark Side of the Stream on 104.7.